How's it going, man?
It's going well. Good to see you again.
Yeah, likewise, likewise. So you're down in St. Pete. So if I have that right, correct me if I'm wrong. I know you're in Florida. What's the vibe like down there lately? All things.
Crowded. Tons of
Yeah,
people are moving here. Lots of people from New York, New Jersey, any state that's locked down. They have seen every positive thing about Florida, and they're here.
yeah. For better or worse, possibly worse. And we were just talking. I'm one of the evil New Yorkers that's now gone to Austin. So I'm one of the mini parasites jamming up traffic, like we were talking about. So, oh well, you got to deal with me. Sorry.
No, it's cool. I met a ton of nice people. It's just when a bunch of people migrate to a certain area, you just hope that it only changes for the better, because no matter what, it's going to change.
Yeah, exactly. And Florida is one of those places that, there's always been that pipeline with the Northeast, at least, people going back and forth. So maybe it's not as disruptive. And I feel like South Florida has dealt with lots of different people coming from different places for a long time. So
South Florida is New York. It's insane.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everybody down there is like retired from New York.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. So, we talked when we were gracious enough to have me on, and there's a lot we can go into. And I guess the first thing is I'd love to just kind of learn about your agency and just kind of who you're focusing on. And it sounds like you guys are focusing on SMBs, and just what are you working on lately?
Yeah. So our agency, it's the merger of two different agencies, a marketing agency and then a web development, app development company. And the things that we're working on right now is, a lot of it is SMB. So companies typically between 2 million to 20 million. We do a lot of marketing for them, as well as application development and web development. But we also work with a lot of other marketing agencies. They hire us for strategic partnerships, typically when they needed to either widen their bench because they're out of capacity, or deepen it because they're losing projects because they don't have the tech expertise. We have about 20 developers on our team that help them with that, as well as some other expertise when it comes to SEO. So business is great. Can't complain. We blew our first quarter goals out over 2020. We were up about 15%, which I'm very grateful for. I'm gonna knock on some wood here. I'm a little bit superstitious. Black cats, mirrors, and ladders I stay away from. And so it's just been a fantastic run so far.
Yeah, and that's super interesting. And we're fortunate enough to be in a similar position where we've had one of our biggest last couple of months in the history of the company, and I'm always knocking on wood too, kind of like cautiously optimistic. And part of me is like, well, we've had a podcast for a while. We're starting to get AdWords or Google ads now. I get stuck in the past, working well. Things are kind of firing. Maybe it's that. On the other hand, maybe it's PPP money floating around, maybe it's the whole world going digital and people are having to, figure out a digital sales system. So I'd love to get your take, like there's kind of, in my head, there's kind of like three different possibilities that are like fueling this growth for like digital companies. I'd love to hear like what you think it is.
Yeah, I think it's a culmination of all those, as well as other factors, whether it's e-commerce. We've been doing some really solid business in e-commerce, more people trying to get their businesses online or realizing what they have is inadequate. Everybody, like, stores shut down. So that's going to be something top of mind for some people. PPP money, as you said, I think that's also a factor. But I also think it's some of our approach with the way that we're selling. So we're filtering out bad as quick as possible. And bad is just not as a good fit. They are great people most of the time. And really getting into a thorough sales process. So we're closing the right people at the right amount quicker.
Yeah, that's great. That sounds similar. Let's talk about filtering out people that aren't a fit. I'm always kind of experimenting and trying things to find ways to do this in a way that's classy, right? Where when things are slow, I'll talk to almost anybody, or a team will, and try to help out. Other times that's just not feasible. Is there a way that you found to do this in a classy, kind of graceful way, or, filter people towards a different offering or a partner? Is there any way that you guys have kind of explored that?
Yeah. And I like the way that you said that. You acknowledged that you will explore maybe what wouldn't be ideal fits if you have the time, right? And you have that capacity. And I think a lot of people get really rigid on their approach. Yeah. So I typically follow the BANT, right? Budget, authority, need, and timing. That's something. As far as the bad fit, though, it's just really genuine, logical conversations with the person that you're talking to. One of the phrases I use is, and I use it a lot with our company too, is we're not a clubhouse. We are a business. So we have to make money. And if it doesn't make sense for us to pull on this deal, everybody's going to be unhappy. So let's just be as upfront about that as possible. We had a company that awesome lady, she manufactured something and she, for the last 5 years, has been struggling to get traction. And she said she was going to mortgage her house or sell her house, if I'm not mistaken, to find the money for a marketing campaign. And this is everything that she's like, this is not a good fit. That kind of pressure is not comfortable for myself or my team. And I don't want to be the last person for you, right? So that budget, authority, need, timing, all those things were there. It was more of an ethical conversation that I had saying, I don't want to be your last shot. You've had 5 years where you've thrown everything up against the wall. You kind of have a cool product, but I don't believe we're going to be a right fit for you. So I found her another home with somebody I know isn't necessarily going to be able to knock it out of the park for her, but is also going to be able to explore options that are a better fit because they take manufactured products to markets substantially more than we have.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think that's a good way to handle it. And what I found is that, when somebody's early stage, maybe it's like a solopreneur, or they've got a few employees and they're just not ready for us yet. Usually the recommendation that I've tried to make is, hey, you guys should probably DIY this for a while. You should keep it simple. You should, learn things. Hey, we have a course, even if you don't buy the course, like there's, read a book, like try to do this stuff. And I've just found that it's just like, it's an uphill battle to try to make that argument. Like if people want to outsource something and they want somebody to do it for them, it's like almost impossible to convince them that they need to DIY it. So I guess my question is like, how much have you encountered that dynamic? And if so, like, is there anything that you've found to help people along? Because like what I found to be tough is just saying, well, okay, there's this company over here that does this cheaper, but I'm like, I can't do that because I know they're not going to do a good job for you, mm-hmm. and et cetera, et cetera. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think it's just that it's letting them know that there's a sacrifice going to be made, right? So if you can't pay us, if it comes down to money, okay, well, you can't pay us. There's somebody that's going to do it cheaper. Well, we're really well priced. So then you're going to sacrifice something. So if you want something that's subpar and you're okay with that, then that's fine. And maybe it just comes down to our conditions of satisfaction and our standards. So that's a conversation we would have. If it comes down to timing, that's pretty easy. It's just not a good fit. We can find another home for them. But yeah, as far as we've run into some people that don't have the money, and we've talked about DIYing, and sometimes they get cranky. They, why can't you do it? And then they go into sales mode and they're trying to sell us on their dream, their concept. And we just have to stay firm with our values and what makes sense. And we'll just talk about profitability. Like, no, that doesn't make sense for us. I'm really sorry.
Yeah, it makes sense. So, and to shift gears a little bit, and go back in time, I'd love to just hear about your experience with your merger. Where were you before the merger? Why did you decide to do that, and so on?
Yeah, so I started my agency in 2009. In 2012, I met my now business partner in a mastermind group, the Digital Mastermind that I'm running now. And we stayed in contact over that period. So over that period, there were lots of shifts between 2012, when we finally decided to merge, in 2018. And I was betting on more technology, a deeper technology bench, right? And I was unable to satisfy that. So I would send all my work to the company Oyova, which we eventually merged with. The last couple of years, just to be completely frank, we were flat. We weren't achieving the growth that I wanted. So that was a huge motivator. Also, in my theory of having a wider and deeper bench, which I'm still a huge advocate of. I've been right about that. We've hit, dramatic numbers. So that merger is a force multiplier between the both of us. That's been very successful. Then also, I do enjoy having a partner. I look at it as we coach each other. We lean on each other. It's very, how would you put it? Very respected on both sides. And we know what we're both good at. I'm strong in sales and marketing. He's strong in operations. We both love creating a culture and a team. So there's that kind of Venn diagram approach. But if I had to kind of circle back and put a summary on it, I'd say boredom. I'd say stagnant growth, and in the want of a very collaborative partnership.
Yeah, that's really cool. There's so much to get into there. But just to make sure I understand, so what was the sort of like logistical priority again? So you were what was the strength that you were trying to fill? Was it basically that, I guess what were they like physically giving you when you decided on the merger? Like was it just
dollar for dollar merger based on so yeah, we decided
not numbers, not specific numbers, but were you basically getting, more operational capacity or more sales and marketing strength, or like what was the void you were trying to fill there?
Yep, operations, that was it. So it was getting all the operations out of my control and then having that over to merge the two teams. So yeah, I don't enjoy operations. Yeah, I love being on the strategic side. I like being on the marketing side. I like being on the sales side. But going over P&Ls and making sure that reports and time charts are turned in, it's just like, no, dude. Like I know my strengths, and that is not it.
Yeah, that makes sense. And how long did it take to sort of figure out a deal that would work for both of you guys? And I think that a lot of our audience are dealing with, it's more common to have these strategic partnerships and these sorts of things. Was there a moment when you're like, okay, we actually need to formally merge? Was there a transitionary period? Like how did that go down?
So we always talked about it. I always flirted with the idea over the years. Because when you enjoy somebody's company, you enjoy working them, because we would send projects to them and they would do a knockout, a really knockdown, drag out project on it, or a job on it. They would send projects to us and we do the same thing. So we had that experience similar to hiring somebody in a freelance capacity before you bring them on as a full-time employee. So when we really, the economy was so good in 2018 that we both said, if we're going to do it, now would be the time. In hindsight, wow, that was very accurate. And we said, okay, let's formalize this. I would say from the beginning of that conversation all the way until we had it done was probably 3 months. And then we decided on the date that it was going to happen. And the date was officially, I think, 7 or 8 months later. Right. So, and we just did it at the first of the year. So we decided to do it in May of 2018. And then in 2019, Jan 1 is when we pulled the trigger.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And it's cool that it happened kind of organically. I think a lot of the times when we see, especially like newer agencies, newer organizations, there's sort of partnerships that aren't really based on anything except for both parties wanting to sort of like defer responsibility as opposed to actually like filling in voids that the other doesn't have. So it sounds like a really healthy way to take something like that on.
And I've had failed partnerships. So I had a partnership previously when I started that there's something was just psychological with the person, like didn't work out, just couldn't take the pressure and just exploded and then left. Right. So yeah. And I think it's just really, if I was to give advice on to somebody to look at a partnership, some people have all these different ways to go about it, but get to know them in a very personal capacity. Take their wife out to dinner and their kids and just really understand what's the dynamics, in their personal and professional life. Because if you don't understand that is going to come and haunt you. And that was the issue with my former partner, just horrible personal life. And when business gets tough, okay, your entire life is now horrible because your personal life isn't well, your business life isn't doing well. At what point, are you going to find any happiness? So I think it's really getting a deep understanding of the person that you're going to be married to in a business capacity.
Yeah, it's so simple, but so important that it bears so much repeating. And how the hell do people do that now? It just seems way harder.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. But I know there's people that are looking for mergers because they're in that boredom capacity. they've had a couple years of stagnant growth, and they've tried these different frameworks, or things haven't worked because I did a bunch of risky things when it was just myself. And yeah, I had some years where we were up 200%. And I had another year right after that. We're like, okay, we're down like 350%. But, and I guess the point I'm trying to make there is just really find what it is that you're looking for, define it. And I realized, like, okay, I need somebody to lean on that helps, with some of my wild, shiny tendencies, as well as the operational capacity. And I think you can get a lot of that through peer groups, right? That's where I met my business partner.
Right. That's really important. And I just love how you're framing it, through personal qualities and people, as opposed to things, right? Oh, they have this technology or that technology or this experience. It's more just about who they are, which makes a lot of sense. And I guess with that, can you talk a bit about where you guys have gone strategically, like, where you guys have decided to specialize, where you're playing ball now, and just kind of like what went into those decisions?
Yeah. So as far as specialize, we really focus on looking for technology-based projects that we can bolt on our other services with, right? So let's say that we do an app dev, or we do a web development, and this is common for a lot of agencies, and you're going to try to sell digital marketing services, so on and so forth. So that's one. I'd say the other is we work with a lot of agencies. So we help them sell their projects for more than they could. So that's something we've really focused on. How can we work with more agencies? And because we're exceptional at selling for a profit. So they literally will bring us on their calls, and we will help them upsell their projects, and everybody's happy. So we're getting a lot of business from there. And as far as those strategic decisions, it was looking at what we thought, this is the market. If you're going to just compete out there for just digital marketing services generally, you better be absolutely amazing at that and have something that nobody else has. As far as niching in a specific vertical, that to me is boring in a lot of ways. And I always go to what some of my best clients which were like HVAC and legal, which we do fantastic work on. But if I were to force team members to work on that every day, I don't think ethically that would be right of me, because I don't want to do that stuff every day, right? And I don't think anybody's waking up just saying, I want to create more shiny blue and red HVAC ads. That person exists, cool. God bless them. And the same thing in the legal capacity. So we are a generalist in those areas. We're really strong, but it's easier for us to sell into those spaces when we get it from deep expertise, which is some app and web dev projects that we've done in other verticals, such as like education, or we have some in medical, so on and so forth. So it's an easier way for us to get in the door with the technology than it is on the marketing front.
Got it. Yeah, that makes sense. And there's a lot we can get into with specialization. We've beaten that drum a lot, but I think what I'd be interested in learning more about is just the nitty gritty, like sales process stuff, because it sounds like that's where you guys have a real superpower. So I love to, like, can you take me through that? Like, let's say, you're selling your own services, you get somebody, CMO of a, HVAC company, let's say, they're interested in learning more. Like, can you take me through your process? What happens when? I think a lot of our listeners struggle with, positioning things the right way and really setting up that process. They're treating it like jazz. It's sort of just like fly by the seat of their pants. So I'd love to hear like what you found to work really well.
Yeah, totally. So let's say that we get this individual on the phone, and we're going to do the first call. That first call, we're really looking for kind of touch and feel at first. All right, how do we get along? And all this stuff happens in seconds. Where, okay, well, I'm asking questions, they're responding to those questions, I'm telling a good sales story. And during that call, we want to tee up everything for the next call, if that call is going to happen. We're not going to filter them out, we're going to set the next call. And the way that we do that, we tell them what it's like to work with us. So we explain that we have a very thorough sales process. It's going to be through a series of 3 to 4 meetings. And during those 3 to 4 meetings, we're going to find out if we're going to work together. So in each of those meetings, I'm going to ask to schedule another call so we keep the momentum. That's a key thing that anybody that's listening to this should write this down. If you are not teeing up the next call while you're on that call, you are doing something horribly wrong. Literally tell the person on that call, hey, to keep momentum and not get lost, emails back and forth, I would like to set up another call. How does X time next week look for you? Boom. That's just a key thing. It's a huge game changer for a lot of people. Okay. So first call, we want to talk about, budget. If we feel it's right, we want to make sure that we're going to have the authority for the next call, really get an understanding of what they want to do. And we take a team selling approach, right? So they say, okay, I would like to schedule another call next week. Okay, cool. So now, based on knowing what the problem is and who's going to be on there, we'll take our team members and we'll pull them onto that call. So if it's going to be app dev, we're going to have our app dev team on there. If it's going to be custom PHP, we'll pull those people, WordPress, so on and so forth. Marketing, we'll pull our marketing services. If it's going to be paid ads. So they get an idea of what it's like to work with us. On that second call, we go into depth. So now we're going to start asking them all the questions. If they are unable to give us a budget, we tell them, okay, there's two ways to go about this. Either A, you give us a budget, or two, we figure out how much a budget's going to cost. And at that point, if they don't give us a budget, we try to sell them a discovery, because we're now in a guessing game. And for us to guess with expertise is going to take resources, and resources should be paid for. So we explain that to them. And one thing I should add, all along this, we're continually giving examples and case studies of work that is similar to their situation or their problem. If we don't have something that's industry specific, we'll have something that's problem specific. Here's the solution that was similar to that. If we have something that's industry specific, of course, we'll bolt that on. Okay, so during that second meeting, we're talking about price and cost as much as we possibly can around their problem. So they're getting used to understanding that these things cost money and things are going to be paid for. And during that time, we may ballpark some things. All right, so let's say that they've given us a budget and we're going to go ahead and schedule the next call. On that next call, we then show them an outline. This is also important. We don't give a proposal. We don't ever send over a proposal. We always control the presentation. So on this next call, we voice the price first. We would tell them, hey, it's going to, okay, so for your monthly campaign, it's going to cost, $8,700 a month. The website's going to cost $12,500. How does that land on you? Specifically, that's exactly how we do that. And that's important because if you're doing a video, you want to look them right in the eye and read them. If they blow back and they're really upset and shocked, then okay, that's something that you can unpack there. If they're excited that, all right, you can move along. And that question, how does that land on you? They're going to tell you exactly how that lands on them. All right, so during that time, if they completely agree to the price, we tell them we're going to send over a formal proposal after the meeting, and we'd like that to be signed. And then we sign that, get it executed, or we follow up. If it doesn't work out well, we, based on the price, we either ask to reschedule another call, or we do the numbers there, making sure that it fits based on their budget or their goals and objectives. And that's pretty much it.
Yeah, that's really helpful. So the first call is a touch and feel. Second call is more in depth, bringing in SMEs, asking more questions, trying to get to a rough budget. Third is actually presenting an outline and then hopefully getting a yes on that call. If not, then scheduling, a follow-up. I think one thing that happens in any sales situation is people will ask for price early, right? So on that first call, hey, can you just let me know, like what's the ballpark? What am I looking at here? How do you guys typically deal with that?
Oh yeah, it's absolutely. It's like houses. Do you want a castle or do you want a trailer in the woods?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, all right, well, I don't know. yeah, absolutely. Okay. Well, if you got a castle, we build castles. If you want a trailer in the woods, like, hey, we still might be able to help you. So it just really depends on what your goals are. And I think for us, what we'd like to do, if that's okay, is we have a very thorough process. And if we can really dig in, educate you based on what things are necessary for you and align the cost to those with a little bit of cost engineering, then I'm confident that you'll be happy with the outcome. Would you like to go with our process?
Yes, let's go with your process.
All right, perfect.
Yeah. So the second call, I'd love to just dig into that more. Like what, there's so much that I think agencies get caught up with in terms of building proposals and, bragging, and we have portfolios and case studies, because when you have designers on staff, it's sort of like you're just more likely to build a bunch of stuff and build a bunch of visuals and all these things that you may or may not need. So I'd love to hear your take on that, or maybe that's the third call where you're doing more of that. Like, how should you think about structuring the visuals versus the audio? Like, how do you guys go about that?
Structuring the visuals versus the audio.
In like a live proposal setting, like what are the sort of beats you're looking to hit when you're actually presenting solutions? If that makes sense.
Yeah, a proposal, I tell people, is just a scope of work and the terms. It's if anybody is resting their sales prowess on their proposal, that's hope, and hope isn't a strategy. You have to sell everything up front, get them to verbally agree to the point where they're going to feel bad if they don't sign that contract. Like, it's two humans, all right? We've built a relationship. You've told me you're going to move forward with this. And then I'm going to just send you this formality that you're just going to put a signature on, and we're going to move forward. That proposal means absolutely nothing. It's so all the selling is up front. So, and I see there's like, you got Panda Docs, you got all these companies that are making millions of dollars creating these proposals. And that's cool. That's fine. But if you are selling if you're a professional salesperson and you're selling in a maximum capacity, then your proposal can literally just be a napkin, and right. You're going to move forward. It means nothing.
Sure. So like, regardless of the visuals and like, the logistics and all that, I guess what I'm getting at is when it actually comes time to talk about what you're going to do and how you're going to solve the problem, are there certain beats that you found to hit? Like, are there certain, like, for example, for our process, a lot of it is, what we find is that most people approach things this way. Actually what we found is we approach things this other way. Is there anything like that you think is important to lean on when it comes time to like talk about what you're actually going to do?
And I guess a lot of that comes out based on us describing their problem and the way that we plan to solve it on those series of calls. And they're also interacting with the team. So it's expensive for us to sell this way, but it's also effective and profitable.
Right.
So if you're talking through all those things, then I think it's great. The hard thing to shoot at is there's so many different ways that agencies go about doing whatever it is that they do. And a lot of it is not the best practice. So for instance, we had a call the other day, and the guy, for 6 months, they've been trying to get a quote for their website. And they name all these different companies, and some of them I knew, and they're good people and whatnot. And I said, that's great. And I know our process is a little bit different, right? We take the 3 to 4 meetings. We're not going to send over proposals. Some of these places did these spec pitches, and they did all this fancy stuff. And I told them, and it's also being very candid, I said, is it possible that you guys are the problem over this 6 months, and it's not all of these other agencies? And the guy sits back and he has that look like, okay, I'm probably going to get offended at this. But then it was like, no, he's like, yeah, you know what, man? I think we are the problem. I said, all right. So if you want, we can go through our process. I'm going to send you over some examples, though. I'm not going to force it to you. You speak with whatever decision maker you need, and then you let me know if we're going to have another call, right? So I think it's also that just, really direct candidness based on whatever other processes they're going through, and feeding them into your process.
Yeah, it's all like jujitsu. It's like, okay, you're coming in with lots of force. You want to play from the top and try to throw me around. Fine,
Yeah.
I'll play from the bottom. So that makes sense. And I'm really glad you touched on the fact or pointed out that this is an expensive but effective and profitable process. So it seems like it gets very expensive from the second call, because that's where you're bringing in the fancy SMEs and all that stuff. So let's talk about qualification a bit. Like, what are you trying to get through on the first call to figure out, okay, this is a table worth playing at. This is worth taking further.
So you want to ask if they've ever worked with an agency or somebody if you're just purely a digital agency, or you're web dev, or you're the mix, find out if they've ever gone through that process with somebody else before, right? So if you look at the home building business, the worst thing for home builders, which they still go through it every single time, is a first-time home builder. They're going to come in, I don't know, that closet's not right. And so, all right, that's a much more expensive process. So those are some things that you also want to talk about. And if you can have a conversation about money as quick as possible, have that conversation. Because if they've never worked with anybody and they don't know how much this is going to cost, they're literally using you as an estimator for their business plan. And we don't do that, but we will do that in a discovery. Are you willing to pay for us to do the research necessary for whatever it is that you want to do? If so, let's go ahead and talk about that. It's just being really straight up. Some other things that I look for, are they the decision maker? I do not like somebody collecting pricing for their boss or whatnot. So if they're not the final decision maker, we can't go to the next meeting unless they can guarantee that final decision maker is going to be on the call for the next meeting.
Right. That's important. So with that, let's talk about the paid discovery model a little bit. And you don't have to get into specific pricing or anything if you don't want to, but can you talk a little bit about how you're framing that, how you're setting it up, how you're making it enough so that people have skin in the game and care about it, but not so much that it's, a hard decision and so on.
Yep. So depending on who you're talking to, you want to get an idea of what their background is. But at the end of the day, it's research. And it's research that is performed by experts. And we can go ahead and move it over to a strategy, right? So it's either you frame it as, all right, we're going to do a discovery or we're going to do a strategy. Sometimes we'll change that around. But either way, at the end of the day, you're going to have your best talent, most likely, doing research for their project, and ask them, okay, if we're going to take your best people and we're going to have them researching something, do you think that's something that, would be worth somebody paying you for? And if they say no to that, it's like, okay, we probably don't have a culture fit here. Granted, those people do exist, but most people are logical and like, yeah, that makes sense. Like, okay. And you explain what that engagement looks like. Ours range from all different types of, problems we want to solve. There's the marketing discovery. There's a, conceptual application discovery. There's a web dev discovery. Do we want to go ahead and put wireframes in that? So framing it around their problem, but getting them comfortable with paying for the research and expertise that you're going to provide. Also, if you have examples of what the end result for discovery looks like, show one of those. If your client's okay with you showing that example, because then they're framing this and shaping it in their mind of like, okay, this is what mine's going to look like to me, which is inherently important if you want to move a deal along.
Yeah, that's great. And I'd love to hear, like, in your experience culturally, how how accustomed are your prospects to paying for that research? I think that in the early days, like, the old Mad Men days, like that they would never do that because there were just such few players and there was so much work that would be done on spec and all this pitching and chasing accounts. And I feel like that's, gradually changed over time. So in your experience, like, what's it like now? I know there's agencies that will just like bend over backwards, do things on spec, others that won't. Like, what are you seeing out there?
I'd say depending on how sexy the account is to work with is going to depend on whether people are going to make them pay for it or not, right? So I know that there are people that'll do an RFP and they'll get pitches out there, right? Where they're going to take their top talent, we're going to probably book 80 hours with some of their team members, and they're going to put together one of these really gnarly pitches. So that still exists all day long. I'd say agencies that are between, that are potentially working with SMBs and more middle market don't fall into that category. So forgive me for just trying to create that distinction there. And I would say more are charging for discoveries now because more are getting comfortable with it. But here's the thing, there's the barriers to enter this market are a laptop and somebody that wants to compete with you. So it's just creating the separation between you and that guy or gal that is just like, oh yeah, well, I'm gonna give you a strategy for free. Like somebody said that the other day and I was like, okay, cool. That's awesome. So let me know how that goes. And then we can schedule a call in 3 months. If you don't mind, put it on your calendar. And I just want to do a check-in. Like, okay, all right, let's do that. So, all right, let's just check in. My money's on that not going the way that it should. The sad thing is whatever money they had is probably wasted because it also wasn't effective, but just trying to be a good person, I'd like to lead them in the right way based on what what's going to happen in the future. I can't change their mind now, but I'd still like to make inroads for, creating something better for them after they've already, been in the car accident that I warned them about.
Yeah, that's really key. And to shift gears a little bit, I'd love to just learn more about how you're partnering with agencies. Like, how did that come about? How are you logistically doing it? Are you guys white labeled, and how does that usually go down?
So, or organically, it formed based on the relationship, for instance, my business partner and I had before we merged, right? So we took a lot of that, and that was also one of the interest of me wanting to merge. I like the idea of being able to sell to anybody, and there's immense strength in just having this really focused, market. But with working with agencies, to answer your question, the best way that we go about it is in strategic partnerships. When it comes to white labeling, and we do white labeling, don't get me wrong, but it also has a connotation of opaqueness where it's just, all right, we're going to give you this email address. And, if anybody asks, you work for us, it's like, okay, well, that's just not the best way to start a relationship with your client. So the best agencies just do it in a strategic partnership, going back to the home building model where they say, all right, yeah, these are our tile contractor. This is our custom cabinetry contractor. We're the home builder. We have agreements. We're professionals. We're not worried about them stealing our people. So I think it's finding out how you build that model with agencies. And also, what's the value? The value isn't just necessarily you knocking out a project. Yeah, there's so many people that can just do that, check the boxes. It's being dynamic and adding value above what that is. And that's either A, helping them sell more, B, securing their relationship with their client more, or even finding other things for them that you don't do as a service to help them upsell their client even more.
Yeah, that's important. And I think that the thing that's different and interesting is the fact that you guys will actually get on sales calls and help them with the sales process and that sort of thing. So is there anything that you found to work well in terms of like cleaning up the situation that you get into? Because obviously, you guys are really good at sales and marketing. Like when you're showing up at these agencies, is there often like a period where like, you guys got to stop doing it like this? Here's how we need to do it, and et cetera. And if so, like, how does that usually go down?
Yeah. Sometimes you offend people. But yeah, you want to be as direct and gentle at the same time, right? So it's letting them know that, hey, you potentially left $15,000 on the table there by agreeing to what you just agreed to. Or, hey, we should have explored this more. Or doing a pre-call, may I interject in certain areas that I think we can expand on and really talk about? And it's just one of those things. The more open and trusting you have of that relationship, the better it's going to bear a fruit. So, but yeah, I would recommend doing some postmortems and talk about like, okay, hey, this is where we could have done better. And I tell agencies, yeah, steal our process. I want you to steal our process, because if everybody is doing it the way that I believe the best way, the way that we're doing it, then all boats are going to rise. People are going to charge for strategy and discovery. It's going to be a better market, not with a bunch of tire kickers out there that are just really beating the hell out of a lot of people that got into an industry that they love and want to work hard in. But unfortunately, they get the crap kicked out of them because of, a lack of knowledge and process.
Yeah, I love that. There's like that quote I keep circling back to from Derek Sivers, where it's, if information was the answer, we'd all be millionaires with great apps, So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. So one thing I love to talk about is the sales seat and who's in that sales seat and everything. I think that with a lot of our clients, when you're selling a complex service, getting owners and executives out of the sales seat and getting somebody hired and trained up and everything is not the easiest thing in the world. So I'd love to hear your experience with that. Is that still you in the sales seat? Do you have other people that are doing what you do, and just kind of your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's immensely difficult. This is something I've learned over the years. Selling this type of service is it's harder than most. I have two people that help me with sales under me, right? So, and it's continually training them. One's been on board about I think close to a year, and the other one's been on like 6 to 8 months. And I am still active in specific deals. Right. So if it's a deal of, value, all right, cool. Yeah. And if somebody calls in, there's a probability that they will get connected to me if one of the other people are busy, because at the end of the day, our function is to sell. And if you're not moving on those in lightning speed at whatever comes in your door, you deserve to lose that deal. And it's having that mentality of wanting to win that works. But training somebody based on your process is one thing. The hardest thing is finding somebody that's a good fit based on what this role entails, because you have to be dynamic. No one is ever going to sell better than a principal at a company, because that principal at a company is either talking to another principal or talking to somebody else that's high up that can move that deal around, shape it, doesn't have to get permission, understands what those rules are. So if you can create those guardrails and have that other salesperson be as dynamic as possible, they're going to be more successful. And I think the other component is just experience and time. If you have somebody that came out of media sales, for instance, or like door-to-door sales, they might have a lot of the qualities for getting in the door, but are they going to have the understanding insofar as the importance of a brand book if you're going to develop a website, or the nuances of technology when it comes to things that might inhibit speed? So those are just some fundamental things that I've noticed over the years. Like, we got a big person from a corporate, like a Fortune 100 company, and I've never seen a bigger dud, and we were so hopeful. But then we pulled somebody that was out of the restaurant business that waited tables, and they were immensely more successful. Granted, they decided that, hey, this business is too hard, and went to open a restaurant out in Colorado. So I think I don't have the best answer for it. I just know that it's immensely difficult and it takes a lot of time. Don't expect that person to hit their numbers for at least 9 to 12 months, and make sure that you have a solid process and the time to train them so they can be effective.
Yeah, that definitely maps to my experiences. It's like investing in real estate. Like, you might not see a return for a while, and they've got to, even if they're amazing, they're going to blow up a good number of deals to learn that you might have been able to save. And there's just eventually the training wheels have to come off, and they've got to do that. I think the point about people needing to be dynamic and needing to have room to move around is important. That's something I've heard a little bit less. I know we're getting towards the end of the time, but I love to just hear, like, it sounds like you've trained your people. It sounds like they're probably doing pretty well. It just, this could probably be a whole nother episode, but I'm just curious, like, how do you think about training? What constraints are you giving them? Are you giving them scripts? Are you giving them things to work with? How are you going about that?
Yeah, it's a combination of, I'll give them what I'll call sales stories. I don't necessarily give a script. I'll give them rebuttals. I'll give them analogies and metaphors to use, but I want them to feel comfortable, because when you give somebody a script, unless they're a really good actor, somebody can smell that disingenuousness on them, and that just reeks of desperation. And that's nobody's favorite, cologne or perfume. So I want them to be as comfortable in their skin as possible, and realize that these sales stories and how they can tell them. As far as, I would say, at a minimum, meet with them at least an hour per week, where it's a one-on-one, and it can be 2 half an hours because hey, we're busy, right? But I think giving them that much exposure. Also, if you have a team selling approach, the team also helps them sell because they've been involved in this process. So that's something else that I know has been expeditious to move some of these people along, where they're already hitting their sales goals. Also, sales goals. If you don't have sales goals for your salesperson, okay, you're screwing yourself. You're screwing them. They need something that they can aim toward. And I recommend the first sales goal, if you're bringing somebody on and this is new to you, just have their first sales goal for a quarter. Don't do a month, but granted, you can break those off in fraction as necessary so they achieve, is to make them pay for themselves. Just your break even. Granted, you're still losing money if they're on their break even, but at the end of the day, have them pay for themselves in that quarter. And they begin to realize, okay, I cost money. I can hit this goal. It's low enough. And they're able to propel forward from there. And it's like a wave, right? So you just want to, keep adding more water, and, eventually it's going to crest.
Yeah, I love that. So then they just kind of keep racking up the wins and everything. That makes a lot of sense. And beyond that, I know you're doing a lot. You have a very thriving mastermind. So yeah, I'd love to hear about that. What kind of challenges are you guys focusing on? What's keeping you excited there?
Yeah, it's the Digital Mastermind, and with the group, it's been in existence since 2012. Some fantastic people ran it before me. They handed it over to me to carry the torch. what we focused on over the last year, 2020, was, all right, how do you grow during COVID? And I can say a lot of them did grow. Granted, there was some fantastic stories that came out of there. I would also say some of the things that we're focusing on now is we're having teams more collaborate. So if you're an agency owner and you want a more dynamic team, for instance, you want a stronger project manager, you want somebody stronger in SEO, page search. Well, we now have these mini masterminds that are a part of our group. So it's not only just an owners only group, and that's been wildly successful. That's something that we just launched and we're very excited about. And I'd say the last thing is we have our event in Vegas. We've done one almost every year, except COVID killed last year's, and we have a fantastic speaker this year, Carl Sakis. And it'll be October 4th to 6th. We got a couple tickets left. So if anybody's interested in that, hit me up.
Yeah, that'll be great. And Carl's been on the show a bunch of times, and he's, really great authority on operations and everything. So I think that'll be really useful, like with all of your experience with sales and Carl's with ops. I think that'll give people a lot of value. So we'll make sure to get that all linked up. And then beyond that, Jon, how can people get in touch with you?
Yeah, my last name is spelled T as in Tom, S as in Sam, Ourakis. First name Jon, Jon. If you just Google search me, there's a ton of different ways to find me. I'm, as far as I know, the only one. LinkedIn's good. You can shoot me an email, jonjon@digitalmastermind.com. And yeah, feel free to reach out. Got any questions? I'd love to chat with you. I love meeting new people.
Yeah, for sure, Jon. Appreciate your time, and hopefully we'll have you back on again. There's so much that more we could cover, about acquisition and all sorts of other things. So hopefully we'll get you back on.
Be happy to, man. Yeah, and you guys check out Dan on my podcast. He did a knockdown, drag out job, man. Yeah, it was a great guest. Look forward to having him on again.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah, talk soon.
All right, my pleasure, man. Bye.